I moved to East Los Angeles the summer after high school. My parents bought the house from my aunt and uncle who had just moved out. We already had family in that area, so it felt familiar. The neighborhood was nice and quiet. The plan for me was to live with my parents and save some money while I figured out what I wanted next. I was getting ready to start community college and apply to a medical assistant program. Back then, everybody had an opinion about East LA. People loved to describe it as dangerous, even though most of them had never been there. I grew up visiting my cousins in that same area, and it was never as dramatic as people made it sound. These places are not scary to me. They are just neighborhoods where people live. I met Michael at my cousin's house party that summer. He had tattoos and looked edgy. When he asked me out, I said yes. I was flattered and curious what he would be like. He told me he knew a place that has the best guava nectar in town and that we could go to a drive-in movie afterward. I actually laughed. I like guava nectar, but I have never heard anyone hype it up like that. But like I said, I was curious and I agreed. He parked at the drive-in first. He said we could leave the car there, walk to the restaurant, and come back for the movie. We even asked the employees if that was going to be okay. They said yes, as long as we paid a small fee, which he did. Something about the plan felt strange. The restaurant was about a 20-minute walk away, and the movie started at 9 p.m. It was close to 8. I asked him if it was smart to walk by ourselves so late. He smiled and said he thought I was not afraid of the neighborhoods like this since I had spent so much time in East LA. He said it like a challenge. I remembered mentioning that earlier, and he used my own words to keep me from saying no, so I went along with it. Very few people were on the street and it was dark. As we got closer to the restaurant, he stopped a few times to show me videos on his phone. They were silly clips that he thought were funny. I was uneasy about the walk. It felt like Michael wanted it to last longer than it should have. Something was off. Looking back, I think Michael was stalling. Then a car pulled up beside us. A masked man got out and walked toward us. For a second, I thought it might be a prank like for a YouTube video. Then I heard his voice and he said, "I need your phone and wallet." I remember thinking he sounded young, maybe high school age. I can't prove it, but I could tell this wasn't something he had done before. That was the only time I'd ever been mugged, and I don't know what other muggers sound like, but I just know that guy had never done it before. I think he was hesitating. At one point, I even remember the driver yelling, "Hurry up, man." He yelled back, "I am hurrying, bro. She's right here." He kept looking at Michael. Michael looked back. I could not see their faces, but something in that moment told me that they knew each other. He took my wallet and phone, then ran back to the car and they drove away. Michael stood still. He did not help, but to be fair, I don't know what he could have done. You never know what somebody with a gun might do if you make the wrong move. I was in shock, trying to make sense of what just happened. I told Michael we should go to the police. He kept insisting that we should still get guava nectar so I could calm down. I had just been robbed and he was offering me juice. I had no phone and no way to call anyone, and somehow we were still walking to the restaurant. After that, we walked back. When we finally got to the car, I told him again that I wanted to go to the police. This time, I said that if he refused, I would ask somebody else in the parking lot to call. He finally said okay. At the situation, we gave our statements and it even got stranger. I said the car was gray because I knew what I saw. Michael said it was white. I said there had been a driver who yelled, "Hurry up, man." Michael said there was no driver, that it was the same person who got back in the driver's seat of the car and drove himself off. He kept adding little changes. The officers were polite, but I could feel their patience thinning. When they realized we were giving them two separate stories, one of them sighed. She said she could not really investigate if two people who were both there could not agree on what happened. I knew right then and there they were not going to investigate this any further. Michael drove me home. When my parents found out what had happened, they were furious. My mom told me to never talk to Michael again. She didn't need to repeat that herself. Thankfully, I didn't lose much. My wallet was easy to replace, and I needed a new phone anyways. I have lived in East LA ever since that summer. 8 years later, I've never had another bad experience here. The more I think about that night, the more I am convinced that Michael planned it. I can still remember how he stalled to give them more time to come and mug me. I can even remember how calm he stayed through all of it. I can also still remember how he tried to give the police completely different information from what had really happened. No way that was all an accident. Since then, I've seen Michael a few times at different things. He always wants to make small talk and invite me to things. I keep my guard up and don't agree to anything. I am still shaking writing this, but I'm posting it as a warning to anybody walking alone at night, and honestly, as a reminder to trust your gut no matter what. 2 nights ago, I was walking by myself in downtown Long Beach. If you know the area, I was walking from the Pike to the Westin Hotel parking structure to get my car. The walk itself is about 10 minutes. To give you a little bit more context, usually I am completely oblivious when I walk. I love walking and I love being by the beach. I always wear headphones with my music blasting and I'm totally in my own world, and I also usually wear heels when I dress up. I was wearing a beige leather dress last night, but because of how far the parking lot was, I decided at the last second to wear flat shoes. That single decision and the fact that I left my headphones off probably saved my life. I was about a block away from my car crossing the street when I noticed a man ranging from maybe a few years older to 10 years older watching me. He crossed halfway into the street, but then abruptly doubled back to the exact same block I was on. I made a left turn at the corner. He went straight. I continued walking for a while. I was close to nearing the edge of the block when I turned around, and I realized that the same man that doubled back was walking in the same direction as me, all the way down at the end of the block. I started to panic. I tried to duck into an entrance to get off the street, but I couldn't find my ticket in my purse, and even if I had, there was no way to get in. I was trapped outside. I kept walking and looked back. He had made a left and was closing the distance. Up ahead, I saw 3 girls who looked like they were heading to a club. I didn't think twice. I just forced myself into their group and started walking with them. 4 of us, 1 of them. I pulled out my phone and called the police because at this point, he had crossed the street and was right behind us. He still kept following us. We made a left turn, and the second we had a chance, the girls and I literally sprinted sideways across the sidewalk so we couldn't catch up before the light changed. There was a bar right ahead, and we ran inside screaming for help. When the man walked past the bar, he didn't even look at me. He just kept walking straight like he hadn't just spent the last few blocks hunting me down. The absolute second his isolation and privacy were stripped away, he acted like nothing happened. I made it home safe and unharmed because of those 3 amazing girls and because I happened to have flat shoes on and no headphones. If I had been at my usual baseline, buzzed, deaf to my surroundings, and unable to run on heels, I don't even want to think about what he would have done to me when I got stuck at that locked entrance. So please trust your instincts. If somebody feels like they are tracking you, they probably are. Don't worry about being polite. Make a scene, find a crowd, and don't stop running until you're safe. The year was 1991 and I was 6 years old living in Winnipeg. My family was already in the middle of an unthinkable nightmare. My 10-year-old sister named Robin had just passed away. I was the only child left and the grief in our house was heavy and suffocating. I went over to my friend Holly's place just to get out of the house, looking for any shred of normal childhood. We decided to do what we always did, ride our bikes around the block. It was a beautiful, quiet summer day, kind of afternoon where you feel like nothing bad can happen. But on our 3rd lap around the neighborhood, the atmosphere changed. We noticed a van. It was a beat-up white freezer van with no windows in the back. Just a solid rusted metal shell. As it pulled up beside us, it didn't just drive past. It slowed to a crawl, and the engine had this horrible rhythmic rattle to it. A sound like metal grinding on metal. Being so young, we didn't immediately have that stranger danger alarm go off. We were mostly just confused. We actually slowed down and stopped our bikes to see what they wanted, and the van stopped right along with us, idling heavily. The passenger window was already rolled down, revealing a pitch-black interior that seemed to swallow the sunlight. I looked at the passenger, and the images burned into my brain. He was gaunt, with yellowed teeth and long frizzy straggly hair that looked like it hadn't been washed in weeks. Then the world seemed to move in slow motion. The passenger door swung open. The man put one heavy foot out onto the pavement, shifting his weight as if he were about to lunge. At the same time, I heard the heavy, clunky thud of the side sliding door beginning to retract. The passenger didn't even look at us. He turned his head back into the darkness of the van and said 7 words I'll never forget. "You grab one, I'll grab the other." He said it loud enough for me to hear it clearly, like he didn't even care that we were listening. Pure cold adrenaline hit us. We didn't scream or cry, just slammed our feet onto the pedals. We were only a few houses away, and I remember my heart hammering against my ribs so hard that it hurt. We didn't even stop to kick our kickstands, just ditched the bikes right on the grass in the driveway and scrambled inside. slamming the front door and throwing the lock on. Holly's mom was in the house and was immediately confused. Seeing us burst in crying and shaking, she assumed that we had just fallen off our bikes and scraped our knees. We were gasping, trying to tell her a van was following us, but to her, the rattling engine she could hear outside just sounded like normal street noise. There was no reason for her to be afraid until she looked at us and saw the sheer terror in our eyes. She went to the front window and her face went completely pale. She saw the van. She watched as it slowly, deliberately crept past the house, almost at a walking pace. With our bikes lying right there on the lawn like neon markers, they knew exactly where we had gone. She stayed by that window, her hand on the lock, telling us that it was going to be all right, but she never took her eyes off the street until that rattling engine finally faded into the distance. When my mom came to pick me up later, she was already a shell of herself from the loss of my sister. Telling her that I had almost been taken, that she had almost lost her only remaining child in the same week, devastated her. It was a second trauma piled on top of a fresh wound. It's a weight that I still carry, realizing that if we had just been a few seconds slower, my mother's world would have been completely extinguished. So to the man with the yellow teeth and the people in the back of that rattling white van, let's not meet, please. I live in Brooklyn, New York, and though it gets a bad rap, I have never had anything bad happen to me personally. And if you grow up here, you generally know how to behave to keep your ass out of trouble. I was hanging out in a park with my two best friends when I was around 13 or 14, and we were just sitting on some benches talking. It was the middle of summer, and there were tons of little kids in the park. We usually hung out on the swings, but of course, let the little ones take them. While talking, I noticed from the corner of my eye, two little girls around 7 or 8 years old being called to the gate that separated the park from the sidewalk. There was a large guy who was in a red car that he soon got out of. He was talking to them in a way that I felt wasn't appropriate. What kind of adult comes up to random little girls? I tried to think the best. Maybe he knew them, right? I heard him ask if they wanted to go with him. The girls seemed uncomfortable, and I was on red alert. He ended up stepping away, and the girls were sort of going over the conversation and trying to figure out if they should go or not. I said to them, "Do you know him?" My blood ran cold when they said no. We sprang into action, and one of my friends went to walk a few feet over and write down his license plate number. I flat out said to them, "You are not going with him, and get away from the gate now." They did as they were told and stood near my other friend who is more maternal, who helped them not be so freaked out. The man called out, "Where are you going?" And I told him he'd better leave these girls alone. You don't even know, so get the heck out. Dejected, he watched them for a few more seconds, then got in his car and left. I could finally breathe again. In retrospect, I should have gone the few blocks to the police station and reported him, but I instead gave the girls a very serious talk about strangers, especially strange men, and to never consider getting into a car with somebody they don't know. They seemed receptive, thankfully, and I saw their parents pick them up about 30 minutes later. I refused to leave until I knew they were safe. I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't followed my gut to keep my eye on them. But even if they had decided that they were going to go with him, they weren't getting past me and into that car. I'm telling you that right now. Maybe not as scary as some of these stories, but it's honestly one of the best actions I've ever taken. The events here took place when I was an 11-year-old girl on vacation with my family. My mom, younger brother, and I went down to Port Elizabeth to visit family. Being the only kids present meant that we were more excited to play in the ocean than spend time indoors. My mom picked a sunny day and we packed our boogie boards and we headed to the nearest beach with my grandma tagging along. My brother and I ran towards a set of stairs leading down to the beach. I stopped. There were eyes on me. I sensed it. Growing up in South Africa, you are taught to be vigilant. Notice your surroundings always. Notice people especially. I looked around the crowd, trying to pinpoint what was setting my radar off. Then I found it. Two men about 20 meters in front of me, about late 20s to early 30s. They were frozen in place, staring at me with big toothy smiles on their face. I returned a smile and a nod, acknowledging their presence but also making them aware I saw them. Being friendly, not naive. Be polite, don't trust. Observing them, I felt unsettled. The crowd was moving around them and they didn't speak to one another. and they only seemed to move as I glanced away. I was alarmed, but only made a mental note to keep an eye on them, continued down the stairs, and jumped into the soft sand. My brother and I waited for the adults to pick a spot to set up before we took off swimming. Some time went by. I saw the same men from earlier wade into the water, quite some distance from us, and felt a bit silly for still worrying about them. But I just couldn't shake that uneasiness. I got out and took a rest by my mom. I didn't see the men anywhere, but the feeling of having eyes on me stayed. I chalked it up to paranoia and went back to the water after a few minutes. My brother had gotten out of the water and started digging his magnificent sand pit, so I decided to use him as a landmark to determine my position in the water while riding the waves out. I did this a few times. Suddenly, a goosebump shot up my back. I looked around and the same men were just a few meters away from me, waving and beckoning me towards them. I was having fun up until then and hadn't noticed them approaching. Adrenaline set in as I saw them smiling once more. Their eyes seemed blank, insincere, and out of place with those huge grins. I nervously grinned back and just shook my head at their invitation to come closer. I'm sure the fear was written all over my face, though. As if to confirm my fears of their intentions, they started towards me. I knew I wouldn't be strong enough in the water to fight, run, or swim, and nobody was close enough to hear me call out. As I was panicking, the water suddenly pulled me deeper into the sea. A big wave was coming. I placed my boogie board in position and started paddling. I was now further into the ocean than the creeps. The wave hit when they were about 1 meter away. It took me right past them. I felt relief for a split second, but then felt a hand grabbing and yanking my ankle hard. My heart caught in my throat, kicked out of instinct. Fortunately, being sunscreen doused, I was slippery and managed to get free instantly. The wave carried me all the way to the beach. I was coughing with a mouthful of seawater, but scampered to my feet and ran to fetch my brother. I told him I'd race him back to Mom, and he was delighted for the challenge. I glanced back from where the sea had just ejected me. The creeps were still standing where they were, still smiling and waving. I stayed at my mom's side until we finally packed up to head home. As we walked to our car, I looked over my shoulder. There they were, 2 grown men staring, smiling, and waving at a child. They had tried to grab like nothing was weird. They then turned around and disappeared in the crowd. Yeah, let's not meet again, you smiley, creepy weirdos. I tried to post this a while ago, but it was deemed a wall of text and I didn't bother fixing it. I'll give it another go now, but I'm warning you, I am rather long-winded. Back in college, my friends and I got into the habit of exploring abandoned buildings. We've seen some incredible places and have gotten some pretty cool souvenirs. I don't really condone taking stuff from buildings, but if it is about to be torn down and contractors have taken out everything they deem to be worth something, then I'll gladly take that depression glass they left behind. It's a small group of friends that goes exploring with me, and I love introducing new people to it. A friend of mine had asked me on several occasions if I could take him somewhere because he never went exploring before. I decided to take him to an old paper factory that didn't have much inside but had an absolutely beautiful view of the city from the roof. Also, it was incredibly easy to get in and out of. We went with a few other people, but 2 of my friends had decided to wait outside for us since they had been in the building a few too many times to find it interesting anymore. As we went to climb inside, a drunk couple came out. Not unusual. A lot of people use the building to smoke and drink or paint in, and we asked if there were many people inside. They said they thought it was mostly empty, but they heard somebody banging around a few floors up and it startled them. They said he sounded a bit angry and maybe we should avoid the roof. Since we weren't there to drink or anything, the roof was our only goal. We decided that we'll take our chances and head up. After all, it is a massive building and we didn't think we would run into the guy. We walk up 10 flights of stairs and then climb the ladder to the roof. My friend is impressed and the view is awesome. As we are about to head back down, my friend waiting on the street calls us. He says that a man had passed out in the street and that the 2 of them pulled him out of the way of traffic and called an ambulance for him. They suggest that we waited out on the roof to avoid exiting the building while the cops are there. Neither of us can afford the $5,000 fine or 2 weeks of jail time just for looking at the city from an abandoned building. We wait, but we probably shouldn't have waited on the roof. We get the all clear for my friend to come back down and we head to the ladder. My My friend goes first and then her flashlight dies. The ladder is tricky to get onto when you can't see it and is missing some rungs, so I come down very slowly in the dark, afraid of hurting myself. I hop down and my friend tells me very quietly that he hears somebody in the room next to us. I shrug it off and we already know people are in the building. Then the screaming starts. At first, it almost sounds like one of my friends who waited outside yelling my name. I hesitate at the top of the stairs. Just outside the door of the room, the screaming is coming from. Trying to decide if it is him and he's playing some sort of prank. The guy I came into the building with grabs my wrists and we start running down the stairs. At this point, it's pretty obvious it's not my friend and it is just guttural, intense screaming. We start down the stairs and then hear really loud banging to go with the screaming. It sounds like this guy has a very heavy object that he is swinging at the walls and exposed pipes with. There is only one flight of stairs because every other way down is out of order. Great elevators. So we are trapped in this stairwell and it's 10 flights till we reach the ground floor and have to book it to the opposite side of this factory and back out the hole that we climbed through. Besides screaming and swinging that heavy object, we hear him barreling down the stairs behind us, but he is at least one floor behind. Whatever he is using to hit the walls and pipes with is clearly enough to do some damage to our skulls because a bit of brick chipped off the wall and follows us down the steps. And that's when my friend grabs my wrist again and throws me through the nearest door. We've only made it down 3 floors, and at the beginning of each flight of stairs, there is one door that opens onto the entire level. In other words, it is painfully obvious where we've gone. After flying into this room, we notice it has been gutted like every other floor, but more of the windows are boarded up and it is very dark. All that's in the room to hide behind are some pillars. We get behind one and huddle together. This guy stops outside the doorway to the room we are in, and he is still screaming. It's terrifying. Then he starts swinging his weapon around and slamming it into the doorframe. We are sure that he is going to come in, and the only way out is the door he is currently standing at. Neither of us ever looks around the pillar to see the guy, and we have no idea what his weapon is. Nearly 4 minutes pass, and he hasn't stopped screaming. For whatever reason, he doesn't come into the room we are in, but starts running down the stairs. We can hear him hitting pipes and smacking the walls, and we just wait. We have 7 floors to go down, and we could pass him in any doorway on the way down. Eventually, the screaming and the banging stop, but we still think we should wait. That's when we hear something from a different corner of our room. There is just enough light from a window in the back that hasn't been boarded up, and we see a figure get up off the floor. This person has been in the room with us the entire 7 or 8 minutes that we've been in here. They haven't let on until now. This person, who was in front of the only light source, so we just see a totally black figure, is now shuffling towards us without making a sound. It's exactly like a zombie movie, and we run. We don't bother to find out what this person's deal is and temporarily forget about the first clearly dangerous guy. For an asthmatic, I hauled ass down the stairs and never paused to catch my breath even once. As we are reaching the bottom of the stairwell, the screaming starts again. It's coming from the room next to us, but we don't stop running. The hole in the wall that we climbed through to get into the building is yards away, and this man comes crashing out of the room behind us. We never look back and climb through the hole so fast that I don't even remember doing it. Our 2 friends are waiting for us, and we throw ourselves into the car. They ask what happened because apparently that man was so loud that they could hear him screaming and breaking things from outside the building. They thought we were making all of that noise and were going to give it a few minutes before calling us to remind us that the police were still patrolling the area for drunk underage college students and we should probably shut the heck up. We tell them what happened and then decide to carry on with our plans for the night because a beer was totally necessary after that. I posted a story of how 2 older guys tried to give me a ride while I was walking to work. I say that in quotation marks because I'm 99% positive their goal was to kidnap me. I don't know how to leak the post in this article or else I would do so. This happened about 10 years ago. I'd never seen them before, never seen them after. Long story short, about 20 years ago, I was walking to work early in the morning and a car pulled up beside me driving at my walking pace. They were very persistent on me getting in their car. The only way I got away was because somebody I knew pulled up behind them and told them to leave me alone. I jumped in the familiar man's truck and no harm was done. Fast forward to now, I was leaving the grocery store and I'm in the parking lot, loading my child and groceries into the car. I see this guy walking around picking up garbage. It was obvious that he was hired by the store to do this. As he got closer, I got a little bit more worried. I watched Joe Kenda too much. Nobody else was around. It was 10 a.m. on a Thursday in a small town. He said hello, and I said hello back. As I'm looking at him, I'm thinking to myself, I know I've seen him somewhere. He tells me how nice it is today, and I agree. He then asks me if I want him to take the buggy I was using in the store. I said how nice that was, and it was greatly appreciated. As I'm driving away, I realize why he looked so familiar. He was one of the guys that I'm pretty sure tried to kidnap me 10 years ago. TV shows and movies usually depict abductors driving white or black vans. I didn't realize this until I decided to buy a white 1994 Dodge Ram cargo van to haul some of the gear I needed for work. While driving it, I've been pulled over by cops and searched 3 times for no reason, but that's another story. The point is, some people see vans as suspicious. One day, while returning home, a woman pushing a stroller stared at me for a long time while I drove along my home street. We have speed bumps and I have a lot of expensive, delicate gear in the van, so I was driving very slow. She stared at me, wide-eyed the entire time, so I smiled at her like a friendly neighbor does. She was staring so intently that she almost walked the stroller right off the edge of the curb. I thought it was funny and almost forgot about it. A week later, our HOA email thread heats up when a resident sends out a notice that his wife and toddler were being stalked by a man in a white van. Fearing a pitchfork and torch mob mistaking me for the creeper, I replied to all, saying I live in the neighborhood and also drive a white van. I even provided my license plate number and home address. Big mistake. Jokingly, I added that I also witnessed a suspicious person in the neighborhood. A woman with a stroller who was staring at me so long and had made me uncomfortable. I provided the date and time of the incident to see if their alleged stalker was actually me. It was. Dude got very triggered. He started sending email after email, telling everybody on the list that he can read between the lines of what I was saying. His accusations became more and more ludicrous and turned into personal attacks. Several neighbors on the email list replied that he was behaving badly. The emails eventually stopped, but things got even weirder. On several occasions, while out walking my dog, a 10-year-old-ish girl would come out of her house, run over to me, awkwardly chat me up about my dog, and give me strangely specific details of her life. I wondered why this child was talking to strangers but thought maybe she just knew me from the neighborhood, so I politely played along. Then one day the girl shows up at my house. She said that she was angry because her dad wouldn't let her have a dog like mine, so she wanted to visit my dog for a while. I told her that I must talk to her parents before I could ever let her visit my home like this, and she said okay and left, and I never saw her again. I have 2 daughters, and one of their friends told me the girl who was chatting me up is the daughter of the triggered dude from the HOA email list. He had been sending her out to talk to me and take pictures. My daughter's friend was friends with this girl. The poor girl's dad was making his own daughter uncomfortable, which is why she confided in her friend. The dad was sending his daughter out to chat with me so he could accuse me of I don't know what. And one detail I forgot to mention, I have dash cams in all of my vehicles and CCTV monitoring my front door, so the initial incident with the wife, as well as the girl coming to my door, was recorded. I emailed the triggered dude and kindly offered him copies of the videos of each incident. I also told him I was concerned that his daughter was behaving inappropriately towards strangers. Apparently, this scuttled his plan, as I never heard from him again. For clarity, I am a straight 21-year-old female. So, in November of 2016, I went through a pretty bad breakup. In October 2017, I finally felt comfortable enough to try and get back into the dating world. So, like a moron, I got on Tinder. And it wasn't my first rodeo with Tinder, but this was the strangest thing that happened to me. So, towards the end of October, I met a guy named Dave on Tinder. And from the looks of it, he was an okay guy. He was funny and a gentleman. Didn't ask for anything inappropriate, so it seemed fine. We talked for about 2 weeks and set up a time to go on a date. We decided to meet in the city where he had recently moved to, which was about 35 minutes away from my house. I got to the bar to wait for him and he was 15 minutes late. He walked in and looked relatively similar to his pictures, which I was happy about. And then he opened his mouth to talk and he had a very strange voice, like he was always on the verge of crying. Very weird. He had some tattoos on his arm, including the all-seeing eye Illuminati symbol. Trying to break the tension, I jokingly said, "Illuminati confirmed. Tell me all your secrets." And he goes, "What the heck are you talking about? Don't say that kind of stuff in public." I just kind of laughed it off and he was being really weird. He then says, "You know that people who pry are people who die." I just looked at him and I genuinely didn't know how to respond. Fast forward probably 20 minutes and a couple of my friends came to the bar at my urging. I moved to sit on the same side as him so that my friends could sit on the same side of the booth. The minute I sit down, he puts his hand on my knee and squeezes, and not like, "Oh, I'm interested," but a very hard squeeze. I look at him to stop, and he leans over and whispers, "We have lovely kneecaps." Like, boy, what? By the time my friends left, which was about an hour into the date, he had 7 beers. It was a Tuesday. As I go to close my tab, he stands behind me, and he had a full-on boner. Full-mast boner. I very quickly signed my receipt and stepped away. As I'm getting ready to say goodbye, it starts raining, and he then informs me that he walked to the bar from his house and asked for a ride home. Reluctantly, I agreed, and on the very short drive to his house, he informs me that it's not actually his house, and that he is living in his sister's basement. When I finally park in front of his house, he leans over to kiss me, and I try to give him the cheek, and he physically turns my head and puts his entire tongue in my mouth, and I pulled away. And this guy did it again. I finally pulled away and said, "Get the heck out of my car," and he responds with, "But I'm in love with you. I knew from the moment I saw your pictures. You have to come inside and meet my sister and her husband." I told him that if he didn't get out of my car, I would call the police, and he started tearing up and got out of my car. So, weird boner Illuminati guy. Well, let's not meet. I work at a retail store and I detest my job with all my heart. And because I was a dumb shit and said I was always available, they routinely screw me over and put me on nights. But I whine, bitch, and moan. I digress. I'm okay with working nights actually, since I get to see my boyfriend when he picks me up. My boyfriend usually gets off at 10:30, but he doesn't leave until 11, so most nights I'd have to wait for him. On top of that, he has to make a 10-minute drive. So I'd have to wait an hour and 40 to 45 minutes, which didn't bother me much. He'd call me to tell me he was coming and make sure I was still alive. Earlier in the week, an Uber driver kept asking me if I was somebody named Lenore. I told him no, and he did it again, but this time he kept asking if I was sure. How the heck am I not going to be sure of my name, dude? Fortunately, my boyfriend pulled in and honked at me, causing the Uber creep to speed away. I'm a paranoid person, so this made me wonder if he'd been watching me and knew my boyfriend always came late. And then I freaked out since I kept getting these weird phone calls from some telemarketing agency, but when I answer, nobody is there and they hang up. Is it connected? Is the government watching me? Do I have 7 days left? All jokes aside, fast forward 3 days later and I'm standing there listening to some music, waiting for him to pick me up and call me. He finally does, and he starts cracking a joke about how he's glad creepy Uber didn't answer. As we start shooting the shit and joking, this Indian lady comes up. I don't hear her at first, since I have noise-canceling headphones. She gets closer and keeps calling to me. Finally, she yells, "Hey." I look over at her and smile, then go back to talking to my boyfriend. She does it again and I excuse myself. "Hi, can I help you?" "Do you need a ride?" she asks, and she looks nice enough, but something just doesn't settle with me. Her car is parked at the stop sign and there's somebody else in it. "No, my friend is coming for me. Thank you." I notice there's a man in the driver's seat and that she isn't wearing a uniform from either of the stores near us. She begins to ask again, "Are you sure? I can give you a ride. Do you need one? Get in. Are you sure you don't need a ride?" I begin to feel a little bit uncomfortable, and my preschool don't get in a stranger's car training kicks in, so I politely decline and go back to talking to my boyfriend. "So, are you close?" "Just pulled out. I'll get there. Just stay on the line." "Is that woman gone?" No, she wasn't gone. In fact, she was standing 6 feet away watching me, and she looked annoyed. I told him in code that no, she has not left, and she has in fact remained there leaning on the car just watching me. She is looking angrier with each passing second. Out of the corner of my eye, I see the man tell her something, and she looks at me and begins interrogating me. "Friend's not here. Do you need a ride? Where is your friend? He probably forgot about you, so that's okay. We'll give you a ride. It's very cold. Get in. Tell us where you live and we'll drop you off. Do you need a ride? At this point, she begins to get closer to me. I try to avoid her by moving to the farther end of the plaza strip. Honey? Yeah, so about my sister. Well, she's gotten closer, but I'm pretty scared she's too far away from home. Something might happen. Hurry, so I can tell you. I say in code as the car drives up. Now she looks mad. Get in the car. We'll give you a ride right now. At this point, she opens the car and begins trying to get me inside, pulling me, yanking out my jacket. She's a taller and bigger woman, so she tries to pick me up even. At this point, my bowels threaten to release, and I'm screaming and kicking and wiggling. Meanwhile, I can hear him yelling at me that he's coming and that he's calling the police. Now, my mind is running 1,000 miles an hour, and I'm panicking, thinking I'm going to get assaulted or be some weird present for her husband, since he looks content with her effort to kidnap me. Get in and shut up. I will hit you. You need a ride, so be quiet. You come with us, and if you want to see our house, that's very nice. You need a ride. I start crying as she manages to get my torso in the car. My right hand is locked to my phone, and she begins trying to take it, and my boyfriend is panicking, telling me the police are sending an officer. She shoves my face into her leather seat. Now my airway is obstructed, and she is not letting me go. She is much bigger than me and stronger, and she knows it. Her whole weight is on me. I try not to panic so I don't black out from lack of oxygen, and all of a sudden, I start getting mad as shit. Her husband says something in a different language, and she lifts up one hand and leans down, trying to get something from the front. I immediately used the arms I've been using to push myself off the seat to stab her stomach. She recoils, letting me go a little bit, and I headbutt her, tossing my melon back as I scream, fear-stricken and adrenaline-hazed. That's my purse. I don't know you. Finally, my boyfriend pulls in. I bolt to his car as the Indian woman is sitting on the ground. After I shut the door, he speeds off towards his house. When we get inside, I break down, babbling about how scared and terrifying it all was, and how if I hadn't had that opportunity, she might have taken me to her house and done who knows what. After this incident, the police officer they dispatched got here 20 minutes after and didn't find anybody. My boyfriend talked to his boss and was granted the ability to leave early for me. I'm still weirded out by cars stalling in the plaza. I was also a little bit upset that my war cry was a line from King of the Hill.